On this week's KSP News Show, we take a look at the first screenshot of the new resources and new female Kerbals in-game, and time warp glitches finally fixed. All that and more on this week's KSP News Show. Reporting live from the Kerbal Space Center, it's your host, Jinli Kerman. Good morning, evening and afternoon, my fellow Kerbonauts. My name is Jinli Kerman. We start this week's KSP News episode off with a short clip from Alex Turner. Here it is. As you can see, it is an awesome little helicopter there, and I thank him very much for sending it in. If you do want to send your own clips in, the instructions are in a ticker tape at the bottom of the screen right now, and you can follow those and leave me the link in the comments down below, and who knows, you might be featured on the next episode. But anyway, we have a ton of awesome stories to bring to you today, including about the new resources and female Kerbals being revealed in-game for the first time. So let's get straight on with that first story for today about the new resources and female Kerbals are being revealed in-game for the first time. Max Maps on Squadcast last Friday revealed these gameplay features, and as you can see by the screenshot on screen now, you can see both of these features being showcased. Obviously, we have the new resources system, so let's cover that first as it is the most obvious. You can see here, you can see the spacecraft in the center of the page has a sort of new part look to it. It's got the normal RCS tanks and the normal fuel tank and command pod and what have you, but it's got a couple of new parts here. First of all, it has this tank underneath the command pod, which I can only assume is what stores the fuel that you are mining for, the resources that you are trying to gather, and it looks like quite a large one. I'm guessing they're probably going to be different variants depending on what part size you're using. This is obviously the 2.5 meter variant, but there will probably be 1.25 meters, 3.75 meter, and of course a 0.625 meter maybe. That is a maybe though, because the smaller parts tend to not have a need for more resources, shall we say. Then we have the normal RCS tank underneath that, the normal large RCS tank. By the top of it, you can see a sort of hexagonal sort of shaped object protruding from the side. I'm guessing that's probably the aerial that you can see is bringing up the GUI on the left hand side here. The GUI I'm actually not too much of a fan of. I think it looks a bit complex. It looks more like a mod, if you ask me, than an actual implementation of a game feature. Maybe it's just that because I don't know anything about this yet. But to me, it does seem a little bit complicated. But then again, that could just be me being stupid and you guys could understand it completely clear. But you can tell by the little crosshair with the craters looking all pink. You can tell that I'm guessing the deeper the colour is, the more resources there are in that particular area, in terms of percentage, which you can see on the bottom there. I'm guessing that is probably the only real way they're doing this, although I could be wrong again, because we haven't actually seen any live gameplay of this yet. We only have this screenshots, because unfortunately I didn't tune into Squadcast. But if you guys have any ideas what any of this actually means, then do let me know in the comments down below. As always, I am always very interested. And finally, just before we move on to Valentino Kerman, you can see underneath the RCS tank, you can see a load of tanks and pipes and something that looks very structurally unstable in terms of a part because of all the gaps and shortcomings within it. That, to me, looks like a processing area, a refinery, shall we say. A lot like the Red Alert 3 refineries used to have. You used to get the raw ore from minefields and stuff like that, from mines, and you used to bring it back to a refinery and it would turn it into, well, it would turn it into funds in Red Alert 3, but in Kerbal Space Program it will probably turn it into fuel. I'm guessing it will turn it into fuel, and so that you can go home from your missions and refuel from the surface. And I can't tell you how easy it's going to be to lift off from the surface of Eve now, so thank God for that. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that these parts are going to be extremely expensive. But bearing in mind that they're probably designed for, shall we say, more complex missions compared to like your usual orbital trip and orbital return. These are meant for very complex planetary return missions, which means that they are going to be used on like various different landers and stuff like that, return vehicles and what have you, mining trips, extended mining trips to perhaps Tylo and places like that in the Julian system. Places such as Minmus, which otherwise wouldn't be visited, but will be visited for an extended period of time with these new parts in order to gain more funds and just an easier return in general. But let me know what you think about these parts, guys. Let me know what you think about the look of them in the comments down below. Personally, I think they look pretty cool, although I am not much of a fan of the GUI. As I have stated previously, with the map overlay of the resources, personally, the lines I think look a bit ugly. I think that the hexagonal approach they tried before in their beta test of it was a lot better. But hey, that's just my opinion, and I want to know your guys' opinion, so do let me know that in the comments down below. Moving on to the bottom of this screenshot though, before I move on to the next story, you can see Jedmal and Bill Kerman. Two names we're probably very used to seeing by now. But on the very left hand side you can see a new face, and that is Valentina Kerman. Yes, for the first time ever, a female Kerbal has been going on a mission. And that is what the IVA sort of portrait picture for a female Kerbal shall look like. Personally, I think it looks quite funny. I think Valentina Kerman actually looks a lot happier than the male Kerbals, even when they have their happy expression on, which Bill and Jedmal clearly don't at this point in time. I also think, this is just my personal opinion, but I personally think she looks a lot like one of the Rabids from the Rayman series. I don't know if you guys actually remember those. I think she actually looks, minus the ears, I think she looks a little bit like one of those and bears a sort of resemblance to that. Maybe it's just me being stupid, but I definitely think she looks very cool nonetheless, and I think that female Kerbals were needed, to be fair. Just for equality reasons more than anything. But let me know in the comments down below. As usual, guys, what do you think of the IVA portrait of Valentina Kerman? Do you reckon she looks happier? Do you reckon she just looks the same? Do you reckon that her animations are slightly different? As always, I'm always very interested to know. So yeah, on to the final story for today. And so yes, on to the final story for today. On Tuesday's Dev Notes, Harvester posted this in his section of the dev notes around the third sort of paragraph. He says, I have been able to do one thing which I've been really wanted to do for ages now. You may have noticed when vessels cross spheres of influence at high time warp that the resulted orbit after the transition can be quite different from what was originally estimated. This is caused not by an imprecision of the estimation itself, nor is it a floating point accuracy issue for once. The problem is with the way the actual orbit component in the vessel behaves when switching reference frames. That bit of code was written much long ago with the patch conics system and was much less accurate than the maths estimate your upcoming trajectories. The inaccuracy came from the fact that while patch conics estimation is very precise in pinpointing the exact amount of the vessel crosses SOIs, the actual orbit code would simply react to dominant body had changed between the last orbit frame and the current one, and recalculate the new orbit based on the current position and velocity vectors. That is okay so long as you're not running the game at a high warp factor, but at very high time compressions a vessel may move a lot in one frame. Quite enough to fly far past the true point of SOI transition, which means the state vectors it used to calculate its new orbit could be off so by much as an entire frame's worth of movement. Basically, all of that is just technical jargon to say that the time warp feature in Kerbal Space Program 0.90 and previous versions was extremely buggy when it comes to SOI changes. So let's say you were going from Kerbin orbit, you were on your way to the moon. You decided you couldn't wait that long, and so you put it on max time warp in order to get there quicker. But you end up going through into the moon's sphere of influence at a high time warp as a result, and you end up from coming into a small encounter with the moon to suddenly having a rather large encounter and being flung off into space. What Harvester is doing is now fixing this issue, so it means that time warp will slow down as you approach SOI, and it will also make sure that the orbit is now accurately calculated when you do enter the SOI, no matter how fast you enter that particular sphere of influence. And personally, I have been waiting for this change for so long, because I always do this sort of thing. You guys remember from the Juno video, in fact no, even the Minmus video, when I time warped too long and that ended up in the death of one of my Kerbals, flinging him out into outer space, thus killing him. Providing a nice plot point, granted, but killing him nonetheless through something that could have been preventable otherwise. So I want to know your thoughts on this, guys. Personally, I think that it's an overwhelmingly good decision to do this sort of thing with Time Warp. Harvester is also adding in a Time Warp 2 feature, so you can set a point on your orbit so that you can automatically Time Warp to at some point in the future, and it will slow down time automatically, kind of similar to how Kerbal Alarm Clock works, but a little bit different, a little easier to use. But let me know in the comments down below what you think, because personally I think it is a very good implementation. But yeah, that's pretty much going to round it off for this week's episode, guys. Sorry again that it's on a Monday. I think I may just move KSP News to a Monday now, just for the foreseeable future anyway. Just so that I've got time and stuff on a Sunday to do revision and stuff like that, because exams are fast approaching for me. I think I've only got something like 6 weeks until they start, and I will be making that. I'll be telling you more about that in a separate video. But until then, till the next one, guys, my name is Jinley Kerman, and as always, stay classy.